I never thought I'd find myself in this position, but here I am, recounting the moment my world crumbled beneath my feet. If you asked me a year ago, I would have told you that my life was perfect. I was married to a woman named Sarah, a vibrant, beautiful person who lit up every room she entered. We had a nice house, a good job, and enough stability to feel secure. That was before I started noticing the cracks in our seemingly perfect life. At first, they were minor things, small changes in Sarah's behavior. She was always the one to initiate our weekend plans, but lately she'd been more distant, often glued to her phone. When I asked about it, she shrugged it off, claiming she was busy with work. It was frustrating, sure, but I chalked it up to the pressures of her job as a marketing executive. After all, everyone has busy seasons, right? Then there was the late-night gym class she signed up for. Strange, considering she'd always preferred jogging in the park. I tried to be supportive, but when I would ask how her classes were going, she'd respond with vague, evasive answers. It felt like she was hiding something, but I wanted to trust her. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I kept telling myself I was being dramatic, that nothing was wrong. The turning point came one rainy Thursday evening. I got home early from work, hoping to surprise Sarah with dinner. As I walked up to the house, I noticed her car was parked in the driveway. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. At least she was home. But as I stepped inside, a knot in my stomach tightened. The air felt heavy and there was something off about the silence. I was about to call out to her when I heard laughter coming from the bedroom. My heart sank as I moved toward the sound, each step heavier than the last. I approached the door, and instinctively I knew I had to peek inside. What I saw shattered every illusion I had. Sarah was on the bed with another man. They were tangled together, laughing, and it was clear they weren't just friends. The way she leaned in, kissing him like it was goodbye, it was a moment that felt ripped straight from a movie. I could hardly breathe. It felt surreal, like I was watching a twisted scene unfold in slow motion. I stumbled back, my heart racing. I felt like I was going to be sick. All those little signs I had ignored suddenly flooded my mind, and anger replaced the initial shock. I wanted to scream, to tear the room apart, but I knew I needed to confront her first. Gathering my courage, I turned and walked back into the living room, trying to steady my breath. I picked up my phone, ready to dial a friend, but I stopped. I couldn't let anyone else in on this yet. Instead, I waited, knowing that I had to face Sarah when she got back to reality. When she finally came out of the bedroom, she looked so carefree, and it infuriated me. I confronted her there in our living room, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. "What the hell is going on, Sarah?" Her face went pale, and confusion washed over her features. "What are you talking about?" she replied, trying to play innocent, but I could see it in her eyes. "I saw you with him, I know everything," I spat out, the words tasting bitter as they left my mouth. She laughed, but it was sharp and defensive. "You're being dramatic, it was just a kiss. It doesn't mean anything. Just a kiss." The phrase echoed in my mind like an insult. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. How could she minimize it like that? I expected anger, but what I felt was more complex. I was hurt, betrayed, and utterly confused. In that moment, I realized I had two choices. I could either fall apart or dig deep to find the strength to fight back. I chose the latter, but I didn't know what that would look like yet. All I knew was that I had to come up with a plan, a way to navigate through this chaos that had become my life. So here I am, at the beginning of my journey through betrayal. What comes next is a series of events that would lead me to an unexpected conclusion about love, trust, and ultimately myself. The confrontation with Sarah was just the beginning. As I sat in my living room, the weight of her words hung heavy in the air. It was just a kiss. I could hardly process what I had just heard. I was furious, yes, but I was also hurt in a way I couldn't even articulate. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and one wrong move could send me tumbling into a dark abyss. For the next few days, our home felt like a war zone. There was no peace, no comfort. It was a constant tension, one that felt like it would snap at any moment. Sarah tried to act like everything was normal, but I could see through her facade. She was constantly on her phone, and I could tell she was still in contact with the other guy. I decided to gather evidence. If there was one thing I learned from the confrontation, it was that I needed to prepare myself for whatever came next. I started paying closer attention to her behavior. I noticed how she would smile at her phone when it buzzed, how she would get up to take calls in another room, her laughter making my stomach churn. Then came the day I found a piece of paper tucked away in her gym bag. I was doing laundry and stumbled upon a small envelope. Inside was a note with a heart doodled on the side and a name I didn't recognize, Jake. I felt my pulse quicken. This was the evidence I needed, a tangible proof of her betrayal. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I wanted to be prepared. I spent the next few nights devising a plan. I had to think strategically. Revenge wasn't just about hurting her back. It was about reclaiming my power, showing her that I wouldn't be walked all over. I started plotting how I could make her feel the same emptiness I felt. The thought of her being blindsided by my actions fueled my resolve. I decided to go out more, to live my life as if nothing had changed. I began hanging out with my friends, reconnecting with old ones, and even signed up for a few classes that I had always wanted to take. I joined a local cooking class, and it was liberating to be surrounded by people who had no idea about my crumbling marriage. In a way, it felt good to laugh and to be distracted, but there was still a nagging feeling in the back of my mind. Throughout this time, I kept searching for opportunities to catch Sarah in the act. One evening, after coming home from a class, I found her in the living room, her eyes glued to her phone. I knew she was texting Jake again. I could feel the anger bubbling inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Hey, what are you up to?" I asked casually, trying to sound indifferent, even though my heart raced. "Oh, just some work stuff," she replied, looking up from her phone with a forced smile. I decided to push a little. "You still hanging out with that new gym buddy of yours?" Her smile faltered for a moment before she quickly recovered. "Yeah, just friends. You know how it is supporting each other at the gym." I wanted to scream. How could she lie so easily? But I kept my composure. Instead, I smiled back, but it didn't reach my eyes. I could feel a plan forming in my mind, but I needed to be careful. If I was going to move forward, I had to gather as much information as possible before executing my revenge. Weeks passed, and each day felt like a game of chess. I would watch her, strategizing my next moves, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I installed an app on her phone that would allow me to track her location. I felt a rush of adrenaline and guilt at the same time. But if she could lie to me, why couldn't I find out the truth? The day finally came when I would have my chance. I found out through the app that she was at a cafe downtown, a place I knew she often went to meet Jake. My heart raced as I drove there, a mix of anticipation and dread flooding my veins. I wanted to confront her, to catch her in the act, but I also wanted to gauge just how deep this betrayal ran. As I parked and approached the cafe, I could feel the heat of my anger bubbling to the surface. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this was about reclaiming my life, not just getting revenge. I peeked through the window and saw them sitting together, laughing over coffee, their chemistry palpable even from a distance. I felt sick, but I pushed through the door determined. I needed to hear what they were saying to see how she interacted with him. I stepped inside, scanning the room until I saw them in the corner booth. It was like stepping into a nightmare. A part of me wanted to turn back, but I couldn't. I had to know. I crept closer, trying to remain inconspicuous, and that's when I heard it, the laughter, the intimate whispers. "I can't believe you told him I was just a friend," Sarah said, her voice laced with flirtation. "He has no idea, does he?" I felt my heart drop. I was right there, inches away from the truth, and it felt like I was drowning. The betrayal was raw, and I could feel rage coursing through my veins. I stood frozen for a moment, trying to process her words. This was more than just a kiss. It was a full-blown affair. With clenched fists and a pounding heart, I decided it was time to make my presence known. I took a deep breath, ready to confront her and Jake, to turn this betrayal into a moment she would never forget. I pushed back my shoulders, ready to walk into the storm that awaited me. As I stood there at the entrance of the cafe, I felt like a character in a movie about to confront the antagonist. My heart raced and anger pulsed through my veins, but I tried to keep my composure. I couldn't afford to show weakness, not now. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was about to unfold. I strode over to their table, each step feeling heavier than the last. The moment Sarah caught sight of me, her expression shifted from surprise to panic. The way she froze told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't expected me to show up here, not in a million years. "Hey, Sarah," I said, my voice steady but dripping with sarcasm. "Fancy meeting you here." Jake was seated across from her and he looked up, confusion etched on his face. Can I help you?" he asked, his tone defensive. I didn't break eye contact with Sarah. "You can't help me, but I think you two have some things to discuss." I gestured between them, feeling adrenaline surge through me. "Babe, this isn't what it looks like," Sarah stammered, her cheeks flushing. I couldn't help but scoff at her feeble attempts to brush off the situation. "Really? Because it looks like you're having a nice little date with your friend." Jake shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, man, this is none of your business." "None of my business," I interrupted, my voice rising. "It's very much my business. I'm her husband, after all." Now I could see the panic in Sarah's eyes. She was caught and she knew it. "Tom, please," she begged, her voice a mixture of desperation and annoyance. "You're overreacting. We were just talking." "Talking," I repeated incredulously. "That's what you're going with after everything. You think I'm just going to believe that?" I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to devise a way out of this mess. Her face turned pale, and for a moment she just stared at me as if searching for a shred of sympathy. But there was none left in me for her. "Let's go," I said sharply, turning on my heel and heading toward the exit. I didn't care how it looked. I needed to regain control of the situation. I could feel her eyes on me pleading, but I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of feeling powerful in this moment. "Tom, wait." She called after me, scrambling to get up from the table. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly well, Sarah. You've been lying to me and I'm done with it," I said, not turning back. Outside, the cool air hit my face and I felt a rush of clarity. This was my moment, my chance to confront her without the pretense of a calm relationship hanging over us. She followed me outside, her expression a mix of anger and guilt. "You can't just storm out like that," she shouted, trying to gather her thoughts. "Oh, but I can," I replied, my voice steady, almost calm. "You've made your choices and now you have to deal with the consequences." I turned to face her, the anger I felt boiling just beneath the surface. "What do you even want from me, Sarah? Do you want me to pretend that everything is fine? To accept this betrayal as if it's no big deal? Because I can't do that." She opened her mouth to protest, but the words wouldn't come. She was caught. She couldn't twist her way out of this one. I could see the gears turning in her mind. She was scrambling for a comeback, an excuse, anything to regain the upper hand. "Look," she finally said, her tone softening. "I'm sorry. I was lonely and it just happened. It meant nothing. Can't we just try to work through this?" "Work through this?" I echoed, disbelief coloring my tone. "You want me to forgive you for cheating on me with some guy named Jake? You think it's that simple? Maybe I was just looking for something you weren't giving me anymore." She snapped, her frustration boiling over. "Something I wasn't giving you," I shot back, my voice rising in pitch. "You were the one who pulled away. You were the one who started lying to me." She crossed her arms defensively, her lips pressed into a thin line. "This isn't fair, Tom. You're acting like a child." A child. It was infuriating. A child. I'm the one who's been betrayed. I'm the one who's trying to figure out how the hell to pick up the pieces of this shattered mess you've created. I could see the tears welling in her eyes, but they didn't soften my anger. "You had a choice, Sarah. You could have come to me. You could have talked to me, but instead you went and slept with someone else." At that moment, everything felt so twisted and surreal. I was standing in front of the woman I loved, yet it felt like I was speaking to a stranger. The warmth and trust we had built over the years had evaporated, replaced by this raw, ugly confrontation. "I can't believe you'd throw everything away so easily," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I don't even recognize you anymore." "Tom, please don't say that," she pleaded. "I made a mistake. It was a mistake." "Not just a mistake, Sarah, a series of choices. You turned your back on our marriage." In that moment, it hit me like a freight train. I was done. I was standing on the precipice of a new life, and I would not let her drag me back down. "Maybe it's time we face the truth," I said, my voice steady. This isn't going to work. You've made your bed and now you have to lie in it. The look on her face was one I would never forget. It was a mixture of disbelief, sadness, and perhaps a hint of realization that she had gone too far this time. I turned and walked away, feeling an unfamiliar sense of freedom wash over me. I had confronted the woman who had betrayed me, and though it was painful, I felt a glimmer of strength beginning to grow within me. I was ready to reclaim my life, to make choices that were mine alone, and to navigate the uncertain waters ahead. Little did I know, the aftermath of this confrontation would lead to decisions and consequences I couldn't yet imagine. The aftermath of that confrontation with Sarah was a whirlwind of emotions, each day feeling like a heavy fog that refused to lift. I had walked away from the cafe with a sense of clarity, but I was still grappling with the weight of betrayal. It was hard to believe that the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, had become a stranger overnight. In the following days, I focused on putting myself first. I surrounded myself with friends, finding solace in their company. It was amazing how support came from unexpected places. Old friends reached out, inviting me to hang out, and I felt a sense of camaraderie that I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was easy to laugh and forget about the turmoil for a brief moment, but the pain of what Sarah had done lingered in the background, like a dull ache. I started seeing a therapist, hoping to make sense of my emotions. I needed to process everything, the rage, the sorrow, the feelings of inadequacy that crept in when I least expected them. My therapist encouraged me to explore my feelings and find healthy outlets for my anger. I started journaling, pouring my thoughts onto the pages late at night, and it helped to release some of the tension building inside me. But even with all the support, there were nights when I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying moments in my head. I remembered the way Sarah used to touch my arm, how she would laugh at my terrible jokes. The evenings we spent together cooking dinner. I couldn't help but question everything. Was it all a lie? Was any of it real? Then came the day that would shift everything again. I had planned a night out with friends, a chance to let loose and forget about my problems, but just as I was getting ready, my phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Sarah. I hesitated before opening it. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to erase her from my life entirely. But another part of me craved closure, craved the opportunity to hear her side of the story one last time. With a deep breath, I opened the message. "Tom, can we talk? I'm really sorry for everything. I want to explain." My initial instinct was to shut it down. What could she possibly say that would change anything? But an undeniable curiosity tugged at me. Maybe I needed to hear her out to see if there was any glimmer of sincerity left in her. It was a dangerous choice, but I decided to respond. "Fine, where do you want to meet?" Within minutes, we had arranged to meet at a nearby park. I arrived early, my mind racing with conflicting thoughts. Part of me wanted to hear her out, while another part remained resolute in my decision to move on. I watched the people around me, families laughing, couples walking hand in hand, and I felt a twinge of jealousy. Why couldn't we have that? When Sarah arrived, she looked different. Gone was the confident demeanor. Instead, she appeared vulnerable, her eyes puffy, as if she had been crying. My heart twisted slightly at the sight, but I quickly reminded myself of the pain she had caused me. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's get this over with," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. She nodded and we walked to a secluded bench, sitting across from each other. The tension was palpable, and for a moment neither of us spoke. I could see her struggling to find the right words, and I wondered if she even had any left. "Tom, I'm really sorry," she began, her voice shaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. It just happened. Jake was someone I talked to when I felt alone. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I stared at her, searching for any sign of genuine remorse. "So you thought it was okay to cheat on your husband because you felt lonely?" I challenged, my anger bubbling back to the surface. "Is that really your excuse?" She flinched at my tone but pressed on. "I know it sounds weak, and maybe it is, but I felt like we were drifting apart. I didn't know how to reach out to you. It was easier to find comfort in someone else." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Instead of talking to me, you decided to sleep with someone else. That's your answer." I know, she cried, tears streaming down her face. I messed up. I've been trying to figure out how to fix this, how to earn your trust back. Can't we start over? I want to make it work. The words hung in the air like a thick fog. Part of me wanted to believe her, to hold on to the hope that we could salvage what was left, but the other part screamed for self-preservation. Sarah, I don't know if I can trust you again, I said, my voice firm but wavering. Please, she begged, clutching my hands. I'll do anything. I love you, Tom. I want us to be okay again. The sincerity in her eyes flickered momentarily, but memories of betrayal clouded my judgment. Love doesn't excuse cheating, I said, pulling my hands away. You made your choice, and now I have to make mine. I could see the realization dawn on her face. She was losing me, and the panic was evident. Tom, please don't walk away. I'm willing to work on this. We can go to couples therapy, anything. I felt a pang in my chest. The thought of therapy, of trying to piece together something that felt irreparably broken, was overwhelming. Sarah, I need time. I don't know if I can go back to what we had, and I don't want to make promises I can't keep. She nodded, her face falling. I understand. Just don't close the door on us completely. I'll wait for you. I stood up, feeling the weight of the conversation pressing down on me. As I walked away, I felt a strange mix of relief and heartache. Maybe I wasn't ready to completely close the door on our relationship, but I knew I needed to focus on myself first. That evening, as I sat at home, I reflected on everything Sarah had said. The truth was, I had no idea what I wanted. The raw pain of her betrayal still stung, but I couldn't deny that a small part of me felt compassion for her. I was left with decisions to make and a path forward that seemed uncertain. Ultimately, I realized that healing would take time, and whatever happened next would need to come from a place of strength, strength that I was starting to discover within myself. It was time to prioritize my happiness and figure out what that truly meant for me. The days that followed my meeting with Sarah felt like a blur. I was on a roller coaster of emotions, swinging between anger, confusion, and moments of fleeting clarity. The facade of normalcy I had tried to uphold was beginning to fray at the edges, and I knew I had to take a stand for my own well-being. I couldn't allow her to dictate my feelings or my decisions any longer. I threw myself into my work, focusing on my projects and pushing through the long hours. It was easy to lose myself in tasks, to drown out the noise of my chaotic emotions. My coworkers noticed my newfound intensity and ambition. It felt good to be productive and to channel my energy into something tangible. I even received a commendation for my recent work, which provided a fleeting sense of accomplishment. But despite the busy days, the nights were still haunting. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying memories of happier times with Sarah. I missed the connection we used to share, the laughter, the way she always knew how to make me smile. Yet those memories were now tainted by the betrayal, and I had to remind myself of the painful reality to stay grounded. One particular night, as I lay awake, I received a message from Sarah. "Can we talk again? I miss you." She had started reaching out more frequently since our park meeting, but I had avoided her calls and texts. I wanted to give myself space to think, to process everything without her influence clouding my judgment. But with each message, I felt the pull of familiarity, the urge to respond, to talk it out one more time. After running the thought through my mind a few times, I decided to meet her again. The idea was daunting, but I couldn't keep avoiding the inevitable. I needed to find closure, whatever that looked like. We agreed to meet at a different cafe, one that was more neutral territory. As I arrived, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. I had spent so long preparing to face her again, but now that I was here, I wasn't sure what I wanted. When Sarah walked in, I noticed the change in her demeanor. She seemed more composed than before, her posture straightened, and her expression was earnest. "Thank you for meeting me," she said sincerely. "Let's just talk," I replied, trying to keep things straightforward. I didn't want any pretense, just an honest conversation. We took a seat in the corner, and the air felt thick with uncertainty. "I've had a lot of time to think," she began, looking down at her hands. "I realize how much I've hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just want you to know how truly sorry I am." I nodded, allowing her to express herself. "I know I messed up," she continued, "but I want to fix this. I've been going to therapy and I'm working on myself. I want to understand why I did what I did." That caught my attention. "You're going to therapy?" I asked, surprised. "Yes," she said, her eyes locking onto mine. "I want to be better for myself, and I want to be better for you if you'll let me. I'm realizing that I've been so focused on what I thought I needed that I neglected the most important thing, us." Her words were sincere, but I felt the skepticism creeping back in. How can I trust that this isn't just another empty promise? I challenged, my voice steady. "I can't ask you to trust me," she replied. "But I'm willing to prove it. I want to rebuild our relationship brick by brick. I want to show you that I'm serious about making things right." I sat back, absorbing her words. There was a part of me that wanted to believe her, to hope that we could rebuild what had been lost, but the scars of betrayal still stung, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to dive back into that world with her. "What does that look like?" I asked cautiously. "How do you plan to prove this?" "I want to be open and honest with you about everything. No more secrets. I'll keep you updated about my therapy sessions, and I want to involve you in the process. We can do couples therapy together if you're open to it. I just want to work on our communication." As she spoke, I saw a flicker of the woman I once loved, the one who had dreams and aspirations. But I also saw the weight of guilt she carried, and for the first time I realized how sincerely she wanted to change. "I'll consider couples therapy," I said slowly, weighing the decision. "But I need time to think. This is not something I can rush into." "Of course," she replied, relief washing over her features. "I'll respect that. I just want a chance to show you how much you mean to me. You deserve that." The conversation flowed more easily after that, and we talked about our lives, catching up on things we had missed over the past few weeks. I found myself laughing at her stories, reminiscing about our early days together. It felt strange to see the glimmer of hope, but I wasn't ready to dive headfirst into reconciliation just yet. As we finished our drinks, I walked her to her car, feeling lighter but still guarded. "Let's take this one step at a time," I said as we reached her vehicle. "I'm not promising anything, but I'm willing to explore the possibility of moving forward." "Thank you, Tom," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "I'll be here, ready whenever you are." As she drove away, I stood there for a moment, watching her taillights disappear into the distance. It felt like a pivotal moment, a crossroads where I could either choose to walk back into the shadows of betrayal or step forward into the unknown. That night I reflected on our conversation, weighing the options in front of me. I felt a new sense of empowerment, realizing that I was in control of my destiny. I didn't have to rush into any decisions. I could take my time to heal and see where things led. The journey ahead would be difficult, but I was beginning to understand that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means reclaiming your power and learning to trust yourself again. I was ready to explore this new chapter, whatever it might hold. The weeks that followed my conversation with Sarah were a mix of hope and uncertainty. I had decided to give her a chance, a lifeline to prove herself, but the journey was fraught with challenges. I found myself oscillating between wanting to believe in us and the nagging doubts that came from the betrayal. It was a tightrope walk between love and hurt, but I was determined to navigate it with caution. We started going to therapy together, and it was eye-opening. Sitting across from each other in a safe space, guided by a professional, allowed us to peel back the layers that had built up over the years. Each session brought its own revelations. We explored our communication styles, the ways we had both neglected our emotional needs, and the fear that had driven Sarah to seek affection elsewhere. I watched as she took responsibility for her actions, her sincerity evident in the way she spoke about her struggles. It was difficult to see her in pain, but at the same time, I felt a sliver of hope. She was working hard to understand herself, and I admired her courage. But there were still moments when the memories of her betrayal would rear their ugly heads, nights when I'd wake up in a cold sweat, heart racing, haunted by visions of the affair. We spent time rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. Sarah made a conscious effort to keep me involved in her life. She shared updates from her therapy sessions, and we began to openly discuss our feelings, fostering a deeper emotional connection. I started to remember the reasons I fell in love with her in the first place: the kindness, the laughter, the way she could light up a room. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were days when the weight of our situation felt unbearable. I'd find myself withdrawing, overwhelmed by doubt. What if she falls back into the same patterns? What if I can never truly forgive her? These questions plagued me. And during those times, Sarah would gently remind me that healing was a process, one that required patience and vulnerability. One night after a particularly intense therapy session, we went for a walk in the park. The air was crisp and the stars twinkled above, a stark contrast to the turmoil in my heart. As we walked, I found myself reflecting on everything we had been through, the pain, the anger, the moments of laughter that had begun to return. "Tom," Sarah said, breaking the silence, "I want you to know how grateful I am for your willingness to work on this. I know I don't deserve it, but it means the world to me." I paused, looking at her, taking in the sincerity in her eyes. "I'm trying, Sarah, but it's hard. Some days feel easier than others. I just want to be completely honest with you about how I feel." "I won't shy away from it," she replied. "I want you to express everything. I'm here to listen." As we continued walking, I felt a sense of weight lifting. I realized that we were both on this journey together, and while the scars of betrayal would always remain, they didn't have to define us. I was learning to find my footing again, to trust my instincts. Eventually, we reached a bench and I sat down, motioning for her to join me. Under the soft glow of the park lights, I took a deep breath. "We've come so far, but there's still a long road ahead. I want to make this work, but we need to keep being honest and open with each other. No more secrets, okay?" "Absolutely," she said, nodding vigorously. "I promise. I want to be the partner you deserve." In that moment, I felt a flicker of understanding pass between us. It wasn't about forgetting the betrayal or pretending everything was fine. It was about building a new foundation, one that acknowledged our past but allowed for growth and healing. As the months rolled by, we continued our journey through therapy, and I found myself opening up more. I started to embrace the idea that love doesn't always come easy. Sometimes it requires work, vulnerability, and a willingness to forgive, not just the other person but also yourself. Sarah and I began to carve out new experiences together. We went hiking, revisited our favorite restaurants, and even took a weekend trip to the coast. It was refreshing to see laughter return to our lives, to rediscover the joy we had once shared. One evening, as we sat on the beach watching the sunset, I turned to her, a smile spreading across my face. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" "Yes, we have," Sarah replied, her eyes sparkling. "And I'm so grateful for every step of this journey." The warmth of the sun setting on the horizon mirrored the warmth I felt in my heart. I realized that while the betrayal had changed us, it hadn't completely broken us. It had forced us to confront our flaws and weaknesses, paving the way for a deeper connection. As the waves lapped at the shore and the colors of the sky deepened, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I was ready to embrace it, together. We had faced the storm, and now we were learning to dance in the rain. In that moment, I understood that life is unpredictable, but love, when nurtured and fought for, can rise from the ashes of betrayal, stronger than before. It was a lesson I would carry with me, no matter where this journey led us next.